Welcome to Inside Marketing with MarketSurge, your front row seat to the boldest ideas and smartest strategies in the marketing game. Your host is Reed Hansen, Chief Growth Officer at MarketSurge.
Hello and welcome back to Inside Marketing with MarketSurge. I'm your host, Reed Hansen, and today I'm joined by Shauna Griffiths, who is a fractional CGO and CMO, a marketing strategist, executive advisor, and someone who spent nearly 2 decades helping companies navigate high-stakes growth moments, pivots, and inflection points. She's worked across startups, growth stage companies, and iconic brands, helping leadership teams clarify priorities and actually execute when it matters most. But what really sets Shauna apart is her philosophy that leadership is a sport, and the best leaders train like athletes. She calls them leadership athletes. And we're going to unpack exactly what that means and why it matters more than ever right now. If you're a founder, marketer, or leader trying to scale without losing your mind, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to the show, Shauna.
Thank you so much. I'm truly so grateful to be here and spend time with you and your audience today.
Well, thank you. Well, Shauna, you've got a background as a Division I athlete at the University of Michigan. We share that as an alma mater. I was so excited to connect with you. How has that background as an athlete helped shape how you lead and how you operate today, and even how you talk about business leadership?
Yeah, so much of it really is through this lens of how can I maximize my contribution and impact to the team around me. Well, that has really been informed by the years I spent training as a literal athlete from the time I was 10 years old, learning to hone skills, learning fundamentals, and continuing to hone those fundamentals over time and never relenting on the idea of getting better than each yesterday. And through that lens, I approach business and teams because at the end of the day, people do want to win in their daily roles of their jobs. They want to keep their job. Companies want to win, they want to succeed. And not all companies want to do it at the cost of other people in a negative way. And some do. I'd like to look at it as saying, how can I take that lens and bring it into business? It's language that can be very familiar to people. So whether they have either played sports, they may have children and other people around them who are involved in sports, they may be a sports fan. So when we talk about things like setting your team up for success, playing your role on the team, there's a familiarity that tends to click, and it just comes naturally to me, as you mentioned, as a former Division I athlete.
Well, I know you've worked for many brands, but you've also worked in professional sports organizations. Did you find that those organizations naturally adhered to that philosophy, or is there anything that would surprise us about how those organizations were run?
Is something about excitement and a sports team working in that environment around people rallying together around the success of something that's bigger than them. So while I was in the seat of marketing in professional basketball teams, even supporting the team that was playing on the court really had nothing to do with me, whether they win or lost. It was more my role was to support sales and their efforts to sell tickets or sell sponsorships. But there was a bigger thing that we were all rallying around, and that was the excitement of did the team do well? If the team does well on the court, that usually translates to the team doing well on the business side, which again translates to revenue coming in through tickets and sponsorship sales. So there is a dynamic where each day you're fighting for something bigger than just yourselves, and you do have to bond together. And a lot of it is very integrated. So people do need to know who their roles are and who they're working with side by side, who they're complementing. And when we step back, that's not that much different than a lot of businesses in general. It tends to be, what is the lens that we're seeing that business through? And how do we make it feel more familiar in a way that we're set up to have each person maximize their impact and contribution, which is going to lead to more successes and key learnings along the way.
Yeah, that's helpful. And you've talked about the idea of a chaos wave, in like the life cycle of a business. Can you break that down? Chaos is a word we hear more and more, I think, these days. Just we're throwing a lot of information, a lot of rapid change. But what's this chaos wave?
It's something I've been thinking about so much recently, and I'm glad you noticed it recently and I posted about it. this concept of a chaos wave, I think in life, say if we look in the past 5, 6 years, there's been a lot that's going on around us in the world, in environments, in business. And as leaders in business or people who are in seats of leadership, it's one thing happens and then the next things happen. And if we're constantly reacting to it, then we're literally just surfing this wave of the next problem is going to happen. And then we get into this reaction mode all the time. And that's just the reality. Also, as a leader, part of that role is to not get caught in that wave, that constant cycle all the time, and notice it and be able to choose when we're going to get on it and when we're not. What's best but that's something for us. We also have to think about our people. They also are being impacted by this wave of chaos that's coming to them. So we need to create space to support them in the struggle that the wave brings. We need to find ways to support ourselves during the struggle of that wave coming. Again, the trick is to notice it and not just hop on each wave, because then it just becomes this very volatile existence where you're not looking at controlling what you can control. It's reacting to the things that you can't control, which is not that you can't operate from a place of strength if you're operating in that manner. So that's really the gist of it. The last part of it that I think is really key is understanding that sometimes we get so used to chaos happening that we become very vigilant about it. Now I'm anxious about when that next wave of chaos is going to happen. So if it hasn't happened yet, I'm going to do something to stir up the pot and then create the chaos. So I think those are dynamics that people don't talk enough about, in my opinion, in business settings. I've observed that when there's a lack of discussion about those things, there's a lot of silence and discomfort and assumptions being made. But when we can open up about these and discuss them, it reduces anxiety. And then we're learning and growing with each other and from each other.
Okay. So, if I understand you correctly, it sounds like leaders sometimes amplify the chaos, or create it, or just, like they're just used to it. And so that seems a little daunting. And, as a, leader of an agency myself, something I should think about.
That's the thing. When I suggest these things, it is really to allow ourselves to put a mirror up to ourselves and ask ourselves, am I doing those things? How could I be operating in a more effective manner? And you're right. We can ride the chaos that somebody else created. We can contribute to the chaos or we can create the chaos, right? So there's all those facts, but oftentimes it's instead of looking at ourselves and understanding how are we contributing or how are we holding ourselves accountable for the ecosystem of chaos, we can point to everybody else and say, they did this and they did this and they did this. It's, again, control we can control.
Yeah.
So figure out how we play a role in it or not. And then you can operate more of the time from a place of strength and calm, getting the support you need and supporting other people around you.
So in your work, you step into businesses often as a chief growth officer, chief marketing officer, a consultant or facilitator of better behavior, I guess, and better leadership. What is a typical? How do you start engagement? Like, how do you enter the scene and assess and know where to begin?
I come into it looking for what is the problem that we're all looking to solve for. So someone may say, I need marketing help. Yes, and what does that mean? And I'd like to be able to speak to people who are in the leadership team who are all impacted by this perceived problem or this perceived need for, call it marketing. And I want to ask questions to understand, just to help uncover where the true problem lies. Someone may say, I need social media help. And I dig a little bit and I'm trying to understand where in this ecosystem the breakdown is or the challenge. And it may have nothing to do with needing social media.
Yeah.
It may have to do with, usually the person's out, I need more impressions. Well, why? Are you looking for more revenue? Then let's break down what are the components around that we need to help solve for. I don't come at it as I'm trying to sell you a service. I'm trying to sell, it's not from a like prescriptive nature. I'm going to go in, ask questions, listen, see how, again, in a leadership team, or if it's a head of a department, how they're working with their people, because one person's perception of what's going on may not be someone else's. So there's a lot of fact finding in the beginning to understand, where do we need to start? Where do we need to create a path for problem solving?
Okay, so basically like reframing and getting consensus on the core issue. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Are there common, I mean, I would assume that a lot of people come to you and say that exact thing. They say like, our marketing just isn't working, or I'm not in your role, but I've heard that statement many times, like, our marketing's just bad. And are there?
Yeah, I'm laughing just because of it is. You get that general statement and you're
Yes.
like, yes, I hear you. And tell me more. What does that actually look like? What is the pain point you're feeling?
Right.
And sometimes again, the answers vary, but that's what you're trying to get at, is to the real thing under the hood that's going on. And then you can create a plan around that. And for me, if I don't have the expertise myself, then I've talked to you about this, I work with a collective of basically all-star strategists who can come in, if they're in different subject matter experts, to help round out a team to create the solution for a client. And because a lot of brands are companies, they don't need or want a big agency. I've created this world in which we can come in and solve for what you need in a way that feels right and is basically it's on demand. It's fit to the business and their needs.
Yeah. Well, good. Yeah. And I mean, I think it's good not to be too, I'm trying to think of the word, but like canned in your response, where you say like, well, we'll always go to this solution, because when you say marketing, of course, it's always going to be this, it's good to be open to a variety of different issues that could really be at the core of it. But that said, like, in your experience, have you seen certain areas where just over and over again, maybe something that's trending to be more common in terms of revenue leaks that your clients are seeing, maybe something emerging with AI or with, certain technologies that they are or aren't using?
I think that some of it is an understanding issue. If someone says my marketing isn't working, well, perhaps they don't understand that if it's a consumer facing brand, consumers are searching differently. That's why we have SEO and AI SEO. And so the landscape is changing a lot. And because the landscape is changing, there isn't necessarily one solution that is going to absolutely work for every single client. Again, that's why I'm very grateful that I have the experience of being able to work across different elements of, call it marketing, whether it's alliances, it's digital marketing, email marketing, which I know falls under digital, so that it's being able to connect those dots in a way that helps to make sense for a company. But again, I think it starts with an understanding of what's going on in these trending spaces, because it's making that audience, that target audience, what's going on is impacting them. So they're shopping differently, they're consuming things differently. And just because a brand says, oh, I saw that company do an awesome commercial, I want to do it like that too. Okay, let's step back. Does that actually fit your client? Does that fit your audience? And those are questions I think that really need to be asked when people see these trends, so to say. And you just hopping on the trends isn't necessarily the solution for a brand. But it is so noisy. This is why some brands, there's a wonderful agency out of North Carolina named Boone Oakley that they have a sweet spot in disruption. But the reason for their disruption is to help a brand stand out, is to help so then the audience can see it instead of getting lost in the clutter of everything. Think about the yogurt aisle, right? How do you make a disruptive yogurt? That's an extreme example because it's just such clutter. And it's actually been proven that yogurt sales have decreased over time because of the amount of clutter in the space. But again, that's where I think it is so key to not just hop on the bandwagon of trends and actually have an understanding about what's going on with the audience, with the buyer when these trends are in place. How is that impacting the way that they're actually shopping, the way that they're actually making decisions?
Now, in an earlier statement, you mentioned that you use special ops style partnerships. I like that term.
Yeah.
And so, I'm interpreting that as like the best of the best, the true experts in each space. Now, how should a company or how do you recommend that an organization should look at balancing their internal teams versus bringing in consultants or experts? When's the right time to like hire versus contract? Do you have any thoughts
Yeah.
on how to balance that? Think through that.
I think it first comes down to a person who is a leader of an organization understanding the team that they actually have.
Okay.
And where do you have a hole, or you may have not as much support in a certain area? That's where I think it can be, or you have even like some sort of like conflict or differing within an organization. Either someone's going to come in and fill a spot and be able to provide you that on-demand fueling your rocket ship, so to say. And that person can also bring different perspective to the table. And that's where if you have say your leadership team, maybe it's not as strong as you want or just can't quite get the click in it, you can bring an outside person in as long as that person is going to have a mindset to say, I'm here to help this team operate more effectively together. And a marketing issue, call it, isn't just touching marketing. So it's important to understand the dynamics of the entire group of leaders to understand who does this marketing person need to work with? Who do they need to understand to be able to then create the output that you want? But they're not solo. It's not like just someone who's going to come in as a solo person and start creating magic out of the air, usually.
Yeah.
So I think it starts with, again, look at your own team and figure out where you have some needs. It has a lot to do with where's your budget at? Are you going to hire full time now? Or are you going to wait and have contract for now and then hire down the line? The other thing, if you have a vision of hiring a sales leader, but your marketing isn't quite in the right place, you need to beef up some of your marketing efforts to help set the salesperson up for success. So that can come in, a marketing person can come in and say, do you have a CRM? Do you have an audience database at all? All of these things, because that is going to help a salesperson come in and hit the ground running. Again, I think it goes back to have a true assessment around where your needs are and what your plan is, say for the next 6 to 12 months. And sometimes this is where I come in and will help a CEO as an advisor or a president. Is because sometimes it's hard to know all of that yourself. Sometimes it helps when I go in and I help look at that and help make the distinction, ask a bunch of questions, talk to different people, and get consensus around what we need. And that helps that person be embraced. When you do hire someone in a contract role to come in and help, that helps it be more of an embraced role and an embraced person than just some outsider coming in that's going to tell us what to do or ask us a bunch of questions.
Okay. Sean, let me give you a compliment. And as we close and a final question, we connected over LinkedIn and we're both Michigan alum, and I just found you to be a very generous and open networker. And so I assume that this is probably, I don't have to make a stretch that this is probably a core skill of yours. Could I ask you for leaders here that are listening, how do you best leverage networking, to build your business, build your practice, enrich your career? What are some of the things that we could learn from you on that topic?
Yeah. I think it's interesting. It is about relationship building. So I go into air quotes networking simply with curiosity. This guy Reed, he went to U of M. He followed me or sent me a connection request. I want to learn more about him. I don't look at it and say, what can he give me? I want him to buy my services. I want him to pitch my services, that kind of thing. I truly am just curious to get to know you. Is there anything there? And and a lot of times when people do reach out to me, if I see that there's some sort of an overlap or I find the person interesting, I'll just write them and say, hey, let me know if you ever want to get on a call to get to know each other. It's just that simple, but I actually mean it. And then when I show up as myself, just authentically, this is who I am, and I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just want to get to know you. And I think so many times they'll say, well, you really shouldn't add people you don't know on LinkedIn, or my time is so valuable. I can't spend 15 minutes on a call with Reed because I don't know if he can give me anything. That may work for some people. It just doesn't work for me. I also am actually just a really curious person. I love to learn. I love anything I can take away from a call, or I think it's also helpful because when I go to the next call, if someone has an interest in your space, or if I have a really brilliant person that I would love to recommend as a podcast, then you're in my toolbox of people to recommend. I think that I just love to do that. I think it also helps in the next conversation I go to. And so I think those are things that I would say is be curious, genuine, and authentic when you do show up. At the same time, if this whole line of thinking doesn't suit you, then that's okay too. And you're going to find a different way to do it. But I find this helpful.
Well, that's a great response. And actually, I wish the world had more people like you, people with that kind of curiosity. Shauna, you're just so friendly, just right from the get-go. And I really appreciate that. Just so generous. So,
let me say, if I can say one thing,
please.
It is amazing. Some of the success stories I have are the incredible people I have met by doing it. So I know I said it might not be for everyone, and I'm giving it a little bit of a plug because one of the brilliant strategists on my team, Anthony Latouche, I met him because he saw a picture I had posted, liked my hat, wanted to ask me about it, and boom, fast friends, and we collaborate together. I've had other deals that I've actually done strategic alliance with off of meeting this way. And I think, listen, we're human at the end of the day. That's all people want, to be treated and seen and recognized. But this is about relationships and not transactions. And we have to understand, just like with marketing, that takes time to build that over time. Like one tweet or one Instagram post isn't going to make a consumer buy your widget. One LinkedIn follow or like or message isn't going to make me get to know you. So if we want relationship, if we want to build that, we have to start somewhere. So let's put some time and energy there.
I love it. Let's get away from thinking that posting is going to solve everything and back to where relationships will.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Absolutely.
I'd love to point people your direction. You're obviously offering tremendous services as a consultant, advisor, fractional CGO and CMO. Where can people find you if they'd like to work with you?
The easiest way is on LinkedIn, simply because I tend to be there and I tend to post pretty often. You can also, the other hub for me is SLGimpact.com, which is SLG Impact is literally my initials, Shauna Lee Griffiths, wanting to maximize my impact for brands and people. So again, find me on LinkedIn, find me on SLGimpact.com. You can also email me at shauna@slgimpact.com.
Thank you so much, Shauna. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I look forward to staying in touch.
Want to stay ahead of what's actually working in marketing right now? Head over to MarketSurge.io and see how we're helping businesses grow smarter, faster, and louder. That's MarketSurge.io, because your next breakthrough shouldn't be a guess.